Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hey, everybody. Thanks again for joining us on the EarthWorks podcast. It's been a few weeks since I've done one, and I'm pumped about this, although I'm a little apprehensive. Lew and I talked early in the week, and I think we were 45 minutes into a talk just going over the bullet points. So I've got Lew Sharp on with T-2-Green Corporation. I'm sure a lot of you know of or know Lew personally through projects and consulting that he's done. You've been in the business. I think we've been in the business about the same length of time, and I would guess that we're around the same age. But the stories we tell when we get together are definitely they parallel each other quite a bit in our experiences. So, Lew, thank you so much for jumping on. And this kind of came about through a co-consulting, I guess, project that we were talking about, and I thought, you know what, this would be a great guy to have on the podcast. So, thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Tell me, let's start with kind of your background, how you got into the industry. And, you know, I know you've kind of worked your way up from the bottom up and
literally.
Yeah, exactly. So
I've actually been in the business since age 10. I grew up on a pretty famous golf course, living next door to a pretty famous golf course architect.
Yeah.
So
he likes railroad ties, right?
He likes a lot of railroad ties. Matter of fact, I'll probably die of creosote. But we, I actually started at age 10 working around the golf course, the local golf course there, and then traveling with the construction company, building golf courses all over the world at stupid young age. So, you know, which you couldn't do that anymore.
Why wouldn't you, right? If you get the chance.
But yeah, so I've seen every aspect of the industry, from, you know, the digging the ditches, the weed eating, to on my hands and knees doing irrigation. So, you know, all the way up to today. My actual degree, I have a master's in ornamental turf and a bachelor's in civil engineering, because I wanted to design golf courses.
Right.
And when I graduated from Purdue, well, my famous architect says, "Guess what? You're my grow-in guy, so you're staying right here."
Nice.
So I took that as an honor and a privilege. So that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing now, and I'll never change.
Did he encourage you to pursue those two things in college? Or was that kind of No, that was just
that was all me. That was all me. Matter of fact, it was kind of the total opposite. My father's an aeronautical engineer, and I could have probably had a really good walk-in job at Rolls-Royce. So when I told my dad I wanted to be in the golf industry, you know, I got the typical thing. You know, I could teach a monkey to mow grass, and so I wanted to prove my dad wrong.
Where are those monkeys now, by the way?
Exactly. No. Yeah. When he asked to go play golf at somewhere really, really nice, you know, I see how that works.
Yeah. I tell the story a lot. My father-in-law, my late father-in-law, had a rule with his daughter. His one daughter, he was such a golf fanatic that she couldn't marry anybody over 6 handicap. So when we first met, I actually qualify. I don't qualify for that anymore, but she hasn't kicked me to the curb yet. But yeah, awesome. Same thing. He got to see some pretty cool places as a result of his son-in-law. So
exactly,
membership has its privileges, as they say, right?
Exactly.
And we've talked quite a bit through the years. You've got a daughter that's in the business as well.
Correct. Even though I tried to push her to the turf side, she ended up on the sweater folder side. But she loves the industry, and like we were talking before, you know, it's really good because she is pro turf. Anytime somebody comes in the pro shop and they want to badmouth them talking about aerifying or doing something on the golf course, my daughter will set them straight.
Awesome.
So
we need more advocates on that side of the counter for sure.
Exactly right.
Yeah, cool. So you seem reluctant to name your famous architect, but I think everybody can connect the dots there. But
exactly.
So where have you been, Lew? Where have you consulted? Where have you not consulted?
I will tell you, it's a very small little area that I haven't been. Normally I've even been on the warm season side of things. But no, I do. I'm a global consultant for T-2-Green. So I literally, you name the location, if it's got bent grass, I'm there. So, and in places you wouldn't think to even go for
And
bent
your
grass.
focus is solely bent grass, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So when it comes to grass selection for a new construction or a renovation, and you've got the other areas of the golf course, how does that work with your sister company? And how do you, I mean, do you bridge that gap, or do you have others?
I bridge that gap 100%. And then I also have guys that call me all the time with warm season issues or warm season grasses. I spec it all. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I don't just stop there. It's just my primary focus for our company is just solely bent grass.
And
So,
and so I should have defined this, or had you define it for me. So with all of the acquisitions and the name changes in your side of the industry, so you are an employee of T-2-Green,
correct.
and then
T-Green only.
and then there are affiliates, or explain that how that company works, and if it's still the same as what it's been over the years.
No, it's it's kind of changed. So we do have a pseudo, I guess you want to call it, sister company, which is Pure Seed. They actually do in Pure Seed testing. They actually are breeders of our grass. So we get confused a lot of times. And then T-2-Green is its own individual company, and it's actually the oldest, probably, I think it's the oldest seed company, ongoing seed company in the world.
I would think so.
So yeah, because we started in 1955 and they haven't changed. It started off as the Pencross Growers Association as T-2-Green.
Yeah.
And then in 1973, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year for T-2-Green.
Very cool.
So we became the marketing arm and the growers of T-2-Green in 1973.
Okay.
And
when you started.
No, actually, it's kind of funny because this is really like a full circle for me. So when I was out doing grow-ins, I would actually have them approach me with grasses that weren't named yet.
Oh, okay.
I was growing A1, A4, G2, G6 before they were named.
You were a beta tester every single time.
Every single time, including, I think probably the last one would have been on my side would have probably been Crystal Blue Links. And a great example of that was we were in China and we could not get regular bents, I won't name names, to grow because of the smog. Just wasn't enough sunlight. Well, they sent me Crystal Blue Links and it was up in 3 days.
Wow.
So because it's fantastic for low light intensity.
Yep.
So that was the last one I actually did. And then it's fun now. I go back and visit guys that are like using Pure Distinction. And when we talk about the first guys, they actually were growing PST-OJO, which is named after Joe Duich.
Okay.
So it's Pure Seed Testing, OJO for Joe Duich. And if you did Pure Select, it'd be PST-OJD for Joe Duich.
Interesting. I have a little bit of a history. You know this, but I don't get any of the credit. But DF1, which is now known as Seaside 2, came off of the golf course in Arizona. And it's funny how you follow those names, and shoot, you could, until the renovation, you could pick that spot out that Dr. Duich had pulled that sample from in '86, and it was always the same look, and it was completely different than anything else on that golf course.
And it's amazing when I go to visit golf courses. I'm the geek with, I'm down on my hands and knees looking at segregated or colonized bent grass and going, oh my gosh, that's sexy. You see a little spot over here and you go, oh, I want that. I want that. Everybody's like, what in the world?
They say we can recognize our kids, in a crowd or whatever. Can you pick out varieties before you're told?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Matter of fact, our breeder at Pure Seed, Crystal Fricker, laughs because I can walk up onto test plots and look at the bents and tell you which ones are which without them ever being marked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's that many differences. So, all right. So let's get into seed a little bit since you're here to talk about seed. So
exactly.
And like I said earlier, we talked offline about different philosophies and different companies, maybe different the way people like to grow things in.
Yeah.
Tell me the difference, or tell me where you are on, and I'm trying, Dr. Deutsch and George Hamilton, I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting this. There's blends and there's mixtures, and I think the blend is the same species, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and a mixture is
You
bluegrass and ryegrass or what have you.
Yeah, yeah, or you could do bentgrass, fine fescue, colonial bent,
both of those guys were looking down like, don't screw this up, you clown.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So where are you personally, or as a company, where are you on that when a superintendent is looking to looking to solve a specific challenge on his golf course? Are you blending? Are you suggesting it, or are you trying to stick with the pure thing?
Well, I will tell you, we were probably the first company ever to blend, but we actually sell a lot more monos. When we talk, mono, a single variety, we do that more for greens because you can actually control the environment. And the reason you would do a mono on a green is it will not segregate or colonize as fast. Because if you're throwing multiple different varieties on there, say we'll do a pure distinction, select A1, A4, put all those in a bucket, throw them on a green, they're going to segregate out over time.
And I know the other camp says, well, that segregation is because this environment or microenvironment was different than that one. I get that, but you're talking the appearance of a green.
The appearance, because the majority of the we get that. We get that, because if you have high salts, it'll segregate faster. If you've got more shade on the green, it'll segregate faster. Your water's affluent water, it'll segregate faster. But your players at your club don't know that.
Yeah.
All they know is, oh my gosh, we spent this amount of money and we want it to be as pure as possible, smooth as possible, and look great anytime we come out here, which is impossible.
And you said that's changed through the years in the breeding process, right? Because Pencross is a result of 3 parents.
3 parents. Yes.
And now that's a different process.
100%. Now we just go directly from seed. We would literally plant 3 vegetative clones. We call them, we won't do the names, but we go by red, white, and blue.
Okay.
So, and then they would cross pollinate. So, but even inside the same field, if I grab seed from one end of the field to the other end of the field, it'd be totally different.
In the old way of breeding.
In the old way of breeding.
Okay.
Where now it's homogenized and it's pure all the way through. And as a matter of fact, we won't even select the seed from the outside to make sure that it's clean.
We'll take that, or somebody will pull a sample of a vegetative plant.
Correct.
And then produce the seed from that, and then off we go.
Correct. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think something that, knowing a little bit of the history of DF1 or Seaside 2.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me how long this process is to go from, hey, that's a cool looking little patch on a green, to, okay, here's a bucket of XY, red, white, and blue. How long is
that? To be honest, for us, it's longer than most. Okay. We're not the company that it's like TaylorMade. You buy a brand new TaylorMade driver and you spend $1,000 for that driver, and guess what? Next year there's a brand new driver out there, and guess what? It didn't change.
Right.
The technology really didn't change. Well, for us, it's totally different. We'll spend 15 to 18 years in this process of getting it right, testing it in every type of environment to see, again, make sure it doesn't colonize out fast. Hey, what disease tolerance does it have? Is it heat tolerant, cold tolerant? The other one for us is it's got to be very deep rooting, and it also has to yield high seed so that our farmers want to grow it. We've got the best farmers in the valley, but if you turn around and you give them a seed that doesn't yield, say yields 300 pounds per acre, they don't want to grow that.
They're not going to make any money on it.
They're not going to make money. I'm going to go plant filberts, hazelnuts, tall fescue, something. I'm going to go make money.
Yeah.
So a part of our process is to make sure it's a high yielder and a high performance grass so that farmer likes it. And it's fun to hear the farmers when I'm sitting in the T-2-Green monthly meetings, and they're talking about, oh my gosh, this field droughted out so hard of pure distinction, and it snapped right out of it with just a little bit of water. Well, it's the same thing we see in the other end, at the end user, and it's fun
So
hear the
even though
correlation.
it's a 2 foot tall plant, they can see the same characteristics that we
100%.
Wow,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's really cool. So, yeah, in the Willamette Valley, and that's the only place that bentgrass specifically is grown, at least
Correct.
correct.
100%. And I would say in most cases, you could
Yeah.
probably grow it in other areas, but the quality would probably be off.
Yeah. And the yield thing, it's interesting. I mean, not to get in the weeds on this, but I know some of Dr. Huff's work at Penn State, you know, the struggle on developing a marketable Poa annua plant has been just that. They can't get, you know, if it's a good performing Poa, it doesn't yield seed worth a darn. So they've got this challenge, and some of the stuff that did yield is just trash, and it's not even you know, using anywhere really. So,
well, it's a lot of fun for me, just for the simple fact is, if you're getting ready to do a project and you call up, will you have seed available for me this fall? 100% I will, because I always have a full warehouse. We're owned by our farmers, so they don't care to have extra inventory in-house, you know, compared to other companies where they may not be able to afford that. We can actually afford to do that. So
I would imagine the energy storage in a bentgrass seed is not long enough where you want to carry it over from year to year, and turning inventory is pretty critical.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised. Bentgrass, if it's stored correctly in a cool, dark place, will actually last in a bucket for about 15 years.
No kidding.
Yeah, and it lose very little germ. We were actually doing a clean down on an older warehouse, and we found an old bucket of A4, had it tested, and it for sure was about 18 years old, and it had 86 germ.
Wow.
But it hadn't seen the light of day, you know, in that entire time.
And as you said, cool, dry, and
cool, dry.
That's really cool.
So if guys are, you know, when they're building greens, and I go out and I match up all the tags and make sure they have the same lot numbers when they're building a green, so that's a pure stand on their greens, I will tell them, order extra bent. You store it in the barn, keep it out of the sunlight in the cool, dark area. You'll have bent for a while.
Wow. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Okay. So let's get into specifics on the bent grasses. So what, you know, we see the memes of the current thing. What's the current thing for your company? What are you seeing out there? Let's start with greens and work back to the tea, maybe.
Okay. Greens right now, 100%, you would be pure distinction for us. And you know, obviously watch the Ryder Cup here in a couple of weeks. That'll be there. We had the US Open, the PGA. It's probably, out of all my years of growing grass, it's probably the best putter I've ever seen in my entire life.
Would you say it's the most universal too? Because I'm amazed in my travels in the Western US, how many different climates I see that being grown.
And you'll laugh. I went up to give a talk up in Anchorage, Alaska, and sure enough, I had, you know, pure distinction in Anchorage, Alaska. And I had it in Fairbanks, Alaska. I have it. Well, Rome's a tough place to grow grass. It's hot and humid.
Right.
And then you look, I've got it in Florida. There's a guy in Orlando, Florida. He's a golf course owner in Pennsylvania, bought a golf course down in Florida and planted it down there, and it grows.
Wow.
It's so it adapts to about any climate I've seen.
You said
I would not do Miami, that. Right? FYI, if you know, on this podcast goes out, don't do that. Don't go into those areas.
do as I say, not as I do.
Not as I do. No, that guy did that, but I would not suggest that. You know, it's just like, we know for a fact, we've ran into bent grass and, you know, down in Miami, Florida, but you know, we've got pure distinction going great down in San Antonio, Texas. You know, and you know, those are areas I wouldn't want to grow grass in, but it does fantastic.
Okay.
So, and it could be mowed at, you know, any height. You know, I think one that's a lot of fun. I got a good friend of mine, his greens, he's got 18 acres of pure distinction greens. That's got to be the largest greens in the world.
Just greens.
Just greens.
Oh cow! What is that in the U.S.?
Yeah, California, Rolling Hills Country Club.
Oh gosh.
Rolling Hills, California.
Wow, that's
massive.
No,
and they walk mow.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So apparently labor isn't a shortage there.
I know. Yeah.
So then, and we got in depth on Pencross and hopefully we'll get there in just a second. But so on fairways, what are you seeing? And And maybe in addition to what are you seeing, the dividing line for where clubs will push bentgrass seems to ebb and flow through the years. You know, the 90s, it was going further south. Then it went, you know, then some of the Bermuda grasses in the warm season, then the zoysias were coming on and more cold tolerant. So what are you seeing in fairways, and where's the no-go zone these days?
Bent grass for fairways, I said I probably wouldn't go if, you know, I live in the Midwest. I probably wouldn't go south of Tennessee. I do have it in some of the, you know, cooler areas of North Carolina.
Okay.
Tees you could probably manage, just smaller areas, but you could probably go a little bit further, you know, down into Atlanta area.
Okay.
So, we were talking about blends earlier. 100%. I'm all over blends for fairways and tees. Yeah, just because they have the microclimates everywhere. So.
Right. So if I'm in Indiana and I came to you and I said I want to look at bentgrass fairways, what three blended products?
Which ones would I have? I would do Pure Select, Crystal Blue Links, and PC 2.0. PC 2.0, you don't know, that's the newest one, replacement for Pincross.
Okay. So what? All right, nice segue. Well done. So what's different about PC 2.0 from PC?
One is it'll germinate at super low temps, like Pure Select. It'll actually germinate in that 48 to 50 degree temps. It's salt tolerant, deep rooting. It's finer, you know, than Pincross would be.
Is it bred the modern way, or is it bred the
It's bred the modern way.
It is. Okay.
100%. Yeah. We couldn't afford to do what we used to do with Pincross.
Yeah. And you kind of touched on that. And I want to dwell on that here in a minute, but okay. So 2.0, bred the modern way, lateral movement. I remember Dr. Beard talking about how the lateral movement on that made it such a great tool for tees, for recovery on fairways.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's where I go with my Crystal Blue Links, and if I had to rename Crystal Blue Links, it'd be Pure Neglect. You could throw that stuff anywhere and it'll grow.
Yeah.
I mean, you give me the worst soils, the worst water. You give me. I always tell guys, you give me the darkest tee you have. You put that grass on there, it'll grow. And I've yet to buy a steak dinner on that, by the way. So yeah, because I always bet them a steak dinner, it'll grow. But it shocks me how good that grass is with, you know, matter of fact, I put a putting green in for my daughter in my house, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to mow it all the time. That's the grass I used.
Pure Neglect. I like
it. Because I could go a full week without mowing the thing, or a week and a half, and come home and scalp it down, and it'll snap out in about 2 days.
Well, and I know you and I've talked through the years about cold and low light and short days, and how that just dominates the Canadian market because of that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Interesting.
Well, and for me, you know, just not just Canadian market, but for me, you know, Denmark, Sweden, Norway.
Right.
Yeah.
You got a few freaking flyer miles, don't you?
A few.
A lot of time in the year.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked on, I think it was Wednesday maybe, and talked a lot about the process of harvest and the genesis of harvest, and the fact that, you know, you approach these farmers in the Willamette Valley of Oregon and said, hey, this is what we're going to try to do. Figure out how to harvest it for us. So get into that, because I think this is one of the most fascinating things, and I've sworn for 40 years that I want to get out there and see a harvest. Still haven't done it, but one of these years I'm going to do it.
We got to come out in July, because we have actually harvest in July. So most guys may not know that, and it sounds like a weird time for me. I'm from the Midwest, Indiana, so we're harvesting in October, November on corn. Well, the same combines we would use for corn or soybeans is the exact combines we use for bentgrass. And if you've ever opened a bucket of bentgrass, you know it's as fine as you could ever see.
Right.
So imagine how many rolls of duct tape and caulk you're going to need to fill every little hole on this combine. And beyond that, once you got to get out there, get it all harvested. For corn, you'll turn your blower all the way up, because you want to blow all the stuff out the back. for us, we got to have it all the way down.
Right.
So we're not blowing all our investment right out the backside and reseeding the field. So trying to pick that up. And believe it or not,
same scale. I mean, is it as big a machine as you see on a corn?
100%, just as large.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be happy to share pictures with you guys. Go on my TikTok, you'll see harvest. I love posting and bragging about my farmers.
Yeah.
But it's the only thing is it's going to be a smaller head, and it's got like a belt on the front of it. And we windrow it like you would, hay, get it and stand it up, fluff it up, and then pull it in. But it's a very long process. They go about 1.5 mile per hour when they're harvesting this, compared to we're going as fast as we can with corn.
Right.
And matter of fact, I did filming on it a few years ago, and I laid down on the ground to get the best video I could. And I came home and with bent grass in areas you wouldn't want bent grass. It was just, but it was incredible to watch. As a superintendent, I would love to take as many people as I could to go watch that process and the cleaning process. You got to think, when T-2-Green started growing pin cross, none of this stuff existed.
Right.
The combine wouldn't exist. They would actually have to get the cleaning process from other grasses and adapt that to fit bent, because before this, it was all vegetative. Mm-hmm. So you would plant your stolons out there just like you would Bermuda grass.
Sure.
And you would open in 3 years.
Right.
I mean, it would take that long for a grass to grow in.
Yeah.
Well, nowadays, when you're talking like distinction or select, we plant a green in August and we're open for play in November.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how much grass has changed. But yeah,
superintendents have gotten a little better too, right?
Oh God, yes. Oh yeah, yeah. The problem is, don't overpromise. That was some of the things I'm going through with supers now. They say, oh yeah, we can have this place up and going in 3 months. Don't say that.
Don't do that.
Mother Nature always has different plans for us.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, come out anytime, Kevin. I would love to give you a show around all the different farms. And it's amazing to me. You think of how many farmers we have, and they can produce the exact same quality bent, whether it's North Valley, Central Valley, or South Valley.
Wow. And
we actually, at T-2-Green, we have where you have a blue tag standard. Our standard is actually higher. They set this standard back in 1955, saying, hey, we're going to have it where it's got to be 98% pure or better, or we won't sell it. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, our uncertified seed, the stuff we turn down and we'll sell for reclamation, is actually better than blue tag. Wow. So that says a lot about our farmers and the quality they provide.
So I'm going off script a little bit, but this
Sure.
just kind of popped into my head. With respect to blue tag, I mean, that's been the standard for as long as I've been in the industry. I mean, it's everybody understands that, but I've always asked the question of myself and others: if I'm interseeding bents on a existing stand of let's say it's a mixed stand of POA bent, how important is that? And do you even offer it? I guess it sounds like you don't.
We don't. No, we don't. We don't offer the uncertified for that. No.
That may be on some of the other turf grass species where you kind of got that option on ryegrass, for instance, or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. We do. You'd be amazed how much uncertified bent goes to roadside or reclamation areas. Areas like that we sell that to.
And then do they mix it with other stuff? I suppose.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They want bent because it is established with very little water. It's so funny how we think, but if you literally
hold the soil too, I would think.
Oh yeah. And it's deep rooting.
Yeah.
It actually needs less water. We're actually the people that kill it. Right. Bent will grow anywhere. It will literally grow anywhere. And I've been on the Great China Wall and looked down, and there's bent grass growing in the wall. There'd be a highland bend or something along that line, but it was growing in the wall because it.
So if a roadside project approached you, you would obviously expect pure neglect for that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love that name. I'm never going to call it anything but that from now on.
Exactly.
Okay, so get back to the cleaning. I mean, I think you made the comment the other day that if you could get superintendents out during the July harvest, they would never say a peep about the cost of bent grass again because of how involved it is.
No. And well, this starts way back also throughout the year. When we plant it, it's a full 2 years before we get the first harvest that we'll use. But we actually hand rogue. We actually go out and pull all POA. If you guys could appreciate this, if you've ever picked POA out of a bentgrass green, imagine doing 30, 60, 80 acres of bentgrass fields, picking all the POA out
by hand,
because that's the only way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a cost in doing that. Everybody knows how much labor is right now.
Yeah.
And then just the cleaning process, we can run it through. And again, if it doesn't pass our process of it being 98% pure, guess what? We run it again and again. And then for some countries, we have to have zero soil, and we'll literally lose, trying to make, we'll say 5,000 pounds of bent soil free. We may lose 6,000 pounds.
Wow.
But we need to take care of our customer.
Yeah, when you're talking about size of the product and trying to
exactly
soil, my gosh, I mean, it
just blows away. Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's a really cool process to watch. And again, none of that stuff existed before our farmers. They literally had to figure out how to run pipes from this cleaning process to the next cleaning process, and these shaker tables, which are really cool to watch, and seeing how they, the dirty seed goes to one side, the clean seed goes to the other side. It's awesome to watch.
So what's the reasoning that you wait till the second year to harvest? Is it yield, or is it just
yield?
Okay.
Yep.
So what do you do with
everything established,
or do you not even clean that?
Just mow it down.
Okay.
Mow it down.
Got it. And then how long is a field in before you say, gosh, we got to clean things up and start?
5 years.
5 years. Period.
5 years.
That's just the standard.
Yep.
Oregon,
Oregon standard. And then you got to take it out
and go into a different grass, or is that when the hazelnut?
We normally flip over, do something else.
Okay.
Okay. And just like us for you're going to want to sweeten up the soil, do something else with it, and then come back.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. NTEP, National Turfgrass Evaluation Program.
Yep.
I think a lot of guys have varying opinions about it. I mean, there's certainly a lot of value to it. I think in particular, it's gotten better with some of the local or more regionalized testing facilities. How important is that in a superintendent's selection process? And I think you encapsulated it really well the other day. How important is it, number one, and how should he or she utilize that data and that information, and when?
Yeah. For sure, if you got a project coming up, hopefully you have a little bit of lead time. So again, any testing is critical to, if you go out, see if your university is doing testing, NTEP testing, but just use that as a rule of thumb. Look at what's trending, what's doing well, and use it for that only. Take that, say, okay, hey, this is doing really good in NTEP here, here, and here, and that matches my area.
Okay.
But take it back, plant a nursery, and do it at your property.
Right.
Just remember, all the testing you're seeing at the universities, NTEP, wherever, is not being tested like it's going to be on your facility. They're not using your equipment. They're not beating it up. They're not tearing it up. It's these little bitty trial plots, right?
That might get mowed 3 or 4 times a week at most, never rolled.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I had a chance, I always think it's best to do even one on a putting green up next to the clubhouse, so they'll walk on it.
Yeah.
Somebody will get out there, stand all day long, and putt on an area and beat it up.
I think the data coming out of it is better now, but one of my mentors used to call it the beauty contest.
It is.
It was a beauty contest, and like I said, I think they've really tightened up on the data, data production at this point. But yeah. I agree, and hopefully we'll get to nurseries here in a minute. But I agree, you've got to test it on
site, because
probably in one of the worst. If you can get a least one of the more punishing microclimates on your property, that might be the best place, right?
It's kind of funny. Normally, when you do find a nursery, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
I do that. I don't think they mean to do that, but that's normally
the only land they've got left, I'm sure.
Yeah. Or if you're going to build one, also try to bump one closer to shade. If you're doing a fairway conversion, make sure that you get a trial going over near the trees where there's going to be a little bit of sunlight that just filters through, or whatever you would see on your golf course. But nothing passes up real world testing at your facility.
Right.
Nothing.
Exactly. So. Yeah, we picked a spot when I was looking at different bents, and we picked a spot that was absolutely the worst for shade, but I needed to know, because I had 4 greens that were going to be just like that environment. And I needed to know, is anything going to survive on this? Because, I mean, why would you pick the open sunny area where bentgrass is going to thrive when you've got several that give you headaches?
Exactly.
So, okay, so NTEP, I mean, are they given parameters as far as maintenance regimes, or is it more, here's our variety, and so the different seed companies will provide seed, I would assume, and say, we want you to test it in this environment. Will you plant this for us?
They normally call us up and ask us for seed. Okay. And it's normally, they obviously charge you for that too. They'll ask you for some that you can put in for free. They normally want pin cross as a standard, or they may ask for, we'll say A4 as a standard, because those have been around forever and ever, and everybody knows how they look and how they perform. But there's really no regime they ever ask you for on that. And the other is, one thing that if I could reach out and tell them something to look at, is seed count when they're planting it. So if you look at Pure Distinction, there's 7 million seeds per pound. Okay. Pin cross is 3 million seeds per pound. Well, they have a set
seed rate is different.
Yeah. So that's a totally different seeding rate. So you're talking double the amount of seed, but they'll seed it at a very high rate. So there'll be too many plants per square inch.
So they're maybe seeding at the old varieties rate with new varieties.
Yeah. And every variety, because it may be another, there may be another variety that doesn't have that high a seed count, but it's still a good bent. So they need to take that in account. So this plot would be seeded at this rate. This plot would be seeded that rate, to make sure they're equal.
Okay.
And as we get denser and denser on plants, they're going to have to, that's the big issue.
So I assume then you've changed your seeding rate recommendations through the years pretty significantly.
Oh, 100%. I had to go through and change every tech sheet there was.
So Pure Distinction, what's my rate?
0.75 to 1 pound.
Okay. I know there was a trend, not in your company, but there was a trend to moving to higher rates. I think that was more on interseeding, which
interseeding is totally different.
Yeah, I got that, because you're trying to inundate the system with a desired versus an undesired species.
Yeah, especially when you have something viably growing.
Yeah,
I mean, but there is a case, if you're using a slit seeder and you're slicing it in, I don't care what bin it is, there's no way that you should go higher than, we'll say, 2.5 pounds, because that straight line will even compete against itself.
Yeah,
and die out. Yeah. So there is a breaking point.
Sure.
So more is not always better. So.
Oh, really? The more on principle,
exactly. If you're gonna do it, go at light rates in more directions. How's that?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. All right, let's shift gears here and talk about construction, because obviously
I've done a little. I don't
know if you kept count, but I would imagine there's footprints of Lew Sharp all around the world in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of golf courses.
Right, you assume right, and then consulting would be in the thousands part.
Yeah. So what I kind of wanted to key in on, since you've seen so much in so many different places with different methodologies and things like that, is I want to talk about pitfalls, because there's a lot of construction going on right now. And from your perspective, because you get in probably earlier than a lot of consultants or a lot of reps do.
Yeah.
Give me a couple of bullets of things that, all right, a superintendent knows that in 2025 he's doing a reno.
Yeah.
So the process has already started, right? But
correct.
What are some of the things that you would consider a non-negotiable, as far as you got to get this checked off the list early, that obviously grass selection is one of them, but
Grass is one of them. The other is, I will say this for all the owners out there that'll listen to the podcast. Make sure whoever the superintendent's going to be is on site.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
That is
years.
number one,
Yeah.
because I know there's guys that have been at the club like 40 years. They're getting ready to retire, and their last hurrah is going to be doing the reno, and then they're gone.
Yep.
Well, unfortunately, the guy that's coming in didn't see what went in the hole.
Right.
They didn't see the irrigation going in. They have no clue what went where, the drainage pipes, whatever. He needs to be a part of that, or she needs to be a part of that. And, they need to be making the selections on the grass because they're going to maintain it.
They're good. Yeah. They're going to be stuck with them.
Definitely 100%. I want to see the superintendent's been there for 40 years. Stay around. He's going to have, because you always want to have peers around you. Surround yourself with peers all the time. And because you need to have them for your consultant and peace of mind.
Yep.
Because we've talked about that, but that's number one. Get that, and then from there is testing of the soils that are going to go into the greens, tees, fairways, whatever you're going to do. Make sure that that if it's 100% USGA specs, everything matches up.
Yeah.
The other is water. A lot of guys do not test the water and do water samples on that also.
Yep.
For you guys, make sure that you get, a good report going on with the fertilizer reps. Make sure that you draw up a program way ahead of time and go over, hey, this is what needs to be done at what time, what rates.
Right. Yeah. Just going to stop you for a minute. All of these things that you've mentioned so far, you're talking a 10, 15, maybe $20 million project.
Exactly.
And to save the salary of the incoming superintendent, or to save the money on construction amendments on the front end, how much money that saves you in the long run versus, that line item during the project is, you can't even calculate it.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that we don't consider those things essentials in a construction project.
Yeah. And they don't. Yeah. And then the other one is skimping on, drainage, skimping on irrigation. Hey, we put a new irrigation system in 10 years ago, but they didn't redo the greens. So they're just going to leave that 10-year-old irrigation system in when they redo the greens. Well, that may have been a block system,
right,
back in the day. And,
right,
now we need ins and outs, do not ever skip. This is your one time to get it right.
Yeah, I love the saying. In fact, I put it on the door of all of my offices. If you don't have time to do it right the first time, when do you have time to fix it? And it's money too. When do you have the money to fix it? Right.
It costs you triple.
Absolutely.
If you add it up every time, it's either triple or quadruple whatever it would have cost you to do it right the first time.
I was talking with a superintendent who was doing, I think three greens complexes this fall, and we're talking about sand spec for the greens. And we kind of both agreed that we've got a little bit of a mixed up. He was in the Southwest, but we've got a little bit of mixed up priorities when you can more readily attain a spec on bunker sand than you can on a USGA greens mix
nowadays.
In some locations. And so we're focusing more of our attention on quality control on a hazard than we are on the putting surface. And he just kind of said, you know what, that's pretty amazing, but you're right.
Yeah. And we pay greens fees. We don't pay bunker fees.
I like that one too. I'm going to use that one. Yeah. I'm definitely going to use that one. So what do superintendents miss the most on construction?
It's normally just the details.
Besides their families.
Yeah, besides their family. No, and mental health, by the way.
Yes.
But yeah, details. Just make sure that if it's all possible, bring in, if it's a renovation for sure, bring in another assistant to help watch over everything.
Yeah.
And so you can be out there, take pictures of everything, take drone shots of everything, video of everything.
Right.
We got tablets now, phones, take notes on everything.
Yep.
So because of it will come back and bite you. You got to remember where everything's at. I get called up sometimes. I'll go back on a golf course I built 20 years ago. and go find valve boxes.
Right.
Because I can actually remember where they were at because I kept that detail of notes.
Yeah.
And but that's the kind of stuff they need to make sure, because those things will come back and haunt you later.
There used to 10 years ago, there was a lot of talk about, and maybe it's just because that become such a integral tool on golf courses that we don't hear, but the value of drones during construction, compared to the investment of them is amazing. I mean, the photos and even just on daily maintenance, to take a picture from 100 feet up, exposes irrigation inefficiencies. It exposes all kinds of things that you can't see on ground level.
100%. And now with the infrared that they have on them, you can actually get that transferred over to infrared, and you could see every little thing that's going on, and you can actually detect disease earlier.
My irrigation tech at my last golf course hated when I'd have the drone in the air, because he's like, "Yeah, you're just going to give me a list." I said, "Well, that's part of the deal, And he said, "Oh, you're right. Yeah. It's stuff I can't see from where I am running around my car."
Yep.
All right. So with construction,
yes,
in-house versus contract work. I mean, it's. I asked you earlier what gets missed the most. I think this one might be for me might be the one that I see more often than I should. Guys biting off more than they should and doing in-house projects.
Like I was telling you before, labor. It's so our contractors are having a hard time finding labor, let alone us.
Yeah.
And if say that you're doing a 9-hole renovation. So this year we're going to do 1 9, and the other is what's being left behind on the other side that's being missed.
Yeah.
And then you need to be able to see what's happening, why it's going in the holes. So in-house in the past, I would say I would be more for it. Nowadays, not so much.
Almost regardless of scope, right?
Yeah.
Because of the labor issue.
Yeah, you just can't afford to do it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna do a new tee surface or something, you could do it in the off season. But man, I see guys so thin because they've tried to bite off more than they can't even keep up with mowing. And now we're gonna do a project on top of it.
No. I watched a local club, and I don't want to mention names on that, but that's exactly what happened. All of a sudden you go to visit that golf course, and it was one of the most stunning golf courses you could go play in my area. And all of a sudden it's like, well, what's going on? And then I, start talking to the superman. I am just so busy. I am so tired. And I said, well, what's going on? He goes, well, we're doing this, and we decided to do it in-house. And we just, I had to pull the labor from here to do this, and the details fall. Well, guess what? Their play is falling off too.
Yeah. Word of mouth advertising is pretty strong in any market.
Yeah. And this is an upscale public golf course, and you could hear it. You could see it on Facebook. Even, the chatter was going around, and they were dropping play.
It's tough to recapture that too.
It's too all.
And I don't. When that superintendent said we decided to do it in house, I would wager that he probably wasn't the we he was talking about, right? And
no, that was the mouse in his pocket.
Yeah,
but so it's the club forcing him into doing it because they think they're going to save a buck. And basically,
if you're going to dig in, I think that's one of those issues that you as a turf manager, you probably need to dig in on. It's not going to be a popular thing because they don't understand what's involved with the day-to-day, let alone what's involved with a project.
It's hard, especially if you're young. You and I are both at the same age. It's hard not to be a yes man at the beginning.
Right.
So you're a yes. Oh, yes, sir. I can do that. For sure. We'll take all that on. But that comes with maturity. You learn,
and we'll have it done in 3 weeks.
Exactly. We'll have that whole green done in 3 weeks. It'll be open for playing. It'll be perfect.
I'll mow greens at the end of the month for you.
Yeah, exactly. So no, but that's the problem. It's maturity as you go along down through there, and you'll see you cannot pull that load on top of yourself.
Right.
And your workers quit. I mean, in the market now, where they can make more, more money working at a, what do you want to call it? A logistics center at Amazon, than working at a golf course, that's what they'll do.
That's true. Any other things they should be looking for, when they're planning, what's
planning, make sure that you're, again, find you an agronomist to work with, or a local peer that you know that's got your back and will be there for you.
Yeah.
Again, make sure that you have a sounding board of peers to go talk to if something's going on. If you're going to hire an architect, go look at what project they've done in the past.
Right.
And step up and say, hey, you know, this doesn't fit our clientele, or this fits our clientele. You know, to have that guy come in and, you know, he's going to try to make it his signature golf course and do all these things. And,
Yep.
and the majority of your players are 65 and older, you know, that's tough.
That
if they come in there,
popular decision at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to make a playable golf course. So those type of things happen. But
you know, this is a whole different discussion, but I'm working with a superintendent in California that, the club had decided, and I see both ways. They had decided that they wanted to purchase materials for an irrigation renovation. Well,
Yeah.
he had the wherewithal and the understanding that prices were so volatile. The club had the money. He ended up buying most, if not all, of the materials almost a year out.
Yeah.
And in that time, and that was, you know, a year into COVID, things were pretty volatile. They weren't sure where they were going. He convinced the club to spend the money and saved them about $1.2 million just on components.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
you know, that's another one, and that could bite you too. I mean, if you buy it now and we're on the downward side of things, but you know, knowing what materials cost, where they're trending. I mean, fuel certainly plays a role in that, but you know, I don't know that having a club buy the materials is the best way to do it. Yeah, you're going to save some money, but then you've got to manage that on top of everything else, trying to
storing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. For us, the seed is never an issue for us, but other things maybe, you know, because, you know, ryegrass, you know, that's volatile. Bluegrass, tall fescue, those things could be volatile, but you can't store it long term.
Right.
Do not store it long term.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Good year for yield, I would assume, the way the weather.
Yeah. I was talking to one of the farmers yesterday, and like Pure Distinction, I'll give that for example, you know, 1,000 pounds per acre.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, you know, on a year that they thought was going to be a bad year.
And how many acres of Pure Distinction are in the valley?
Right now, I think we only need, because it's greens only with Pure Distinction, we only need probably 60, 70 acres.
Okay. Interesting.
So,
yeah.
Yep.
I don't really understand the scope of what you need and what's consumed every year.
So. You know, if you're gonna, again, if it's gonna be a grass you use for fairways where you're gonna consume a lot of it, well, you know, use old pin cross or whatever, you know, you're gonna have to have hundreds of acres to cover what your needs are going to be. You know, but you know, on the newer ones, no, not so much.
So we talked a little bit about nurseries earlier, and it's always been, I don't know why it's my hot button, but how many clubs I see that don't have any sod nursery or plug nursery, and then they're plugging out of, you know, edges of greens and trying to do grafts from this green to that green. And what percentage of the golf courses you run into have one? And you gave me kind of a benchmark as to, you know, square footage, that if you had the choice, this is what I would recommend you have.
Yeah. I would say 10% of golf courses I visit have any type of sod nursery at all. 0, you know, 10% or less. If you're going to build one, I would always suggest, this is my rule of thumb. When I was building golf courses, I would actually build that first. I'd build my nursery first.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if it was a brand new golf course, because I could have that grown in by the time we were finishing construction at the other end and had to spot things in. But I would build one, whatever your largest green is, if you're doing greens, bent, I would say build that nursery that size. But you also need to do some for fairways too, because if you have fixing irrigation heads, something along that line, you need that bin also, or whatever grass it's going to be. But whatever your largest green is. So say that you had because I've had this happen. I had a tornado come through and drop a tree down on a green. Thank God I had one that was the size of that green. I could replace everything and we were ready to open. But that's always my rule of thumb, is whatever your largest green is, have a nursery at least that size.
Right.
And But again, if you can put in, if you know that, hey, I got a construction project coming up in a year or 2 years, have that nursery ready.
Yeah.
Put it out there then. The other one, you may not think about this one, but this is one of my favorite things to do for guys that interseed. Is you got your normal interseeding, and I want guys to interseed at least 3 times a year at very light rates.
Okay.
Well, if you go out every day and you cut a cup out of your greens, out of your nursery rather, put it in the back of your cart for the next day. When you go out, put a new plug in. Well, if you take a 4-inch plug and you multiply that by how many days a week you cut plugs,
times 18.
Yep, times 18, and then how fast that spreads on a green,
especially in your cuppable locations, right?
In your cuppable location.
Yeah.
But say that you've already got something in that zone or in that area, you just look for a bad spot, put it in there,
right?
And it'll grow between 10 to 16 inches in a year. You know, it's in my PowerPoints when I give talks on.
There's our nugget for the day. That's awesome, Lou. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's in the hundreds of inches a year that you gain just by doing plugs alone.
If you have a nursery.
If you got to have that nursery though.
If you have a nursery, yeah. I never thought of that. And you know, you're only addressing the cuppable locations, which is where you want the conversion anyway.
Yeah. Well, where that came from was I was working with a club here in Indiana that it's literally 3 guys if all of them show up for work.
Right.
But they did have a nursery. So the greenskeeper would go out and he would cut, you know, I said, just cut, you know, it's a 9-hole course. So I said, cut 9-hole, you know, 9 cups the night before, throw a wet towel over the top. And then when you go out the next day, he's been doing it. And we're on our 6th year of working like that. And he started off at probably 40% bent in the greens, and he's at 80 to 90%.
Oh, wow. That's
and
awesome.
I had several supers come over and evaluate it to show them what we were doing. And they all agreed on where we started and where we're at now.
Very cool. Very cool. All right.
And you can do it with no money. I mean, very little money.
Exactly. That's a great take home today. All right. So I told you, actually, we've been a lot more structured, Lou, than I figured.
Than we thought. Yeah.
I thought we'd be on 50 different rabbit trails by now, but
but
I want to get to, this is kind of my little signature thing. And what I told you the other day is I do a lightning round at the end of all my interviews, and it's the first thing that pops into your head. Unless it's a swear word, but I don't want you to have time to think about it. Although I did give you one ahead of time. So first one is beer, wine, or other.
Other.
Other. Okay. This one's going to be tough for you. Coolest course or location you visited.
Oh God, dude, don't do that to me.
I knew that'd be harder for you than almost anybody.
My family's from Scotland, so I got to say Scotland.
Okay.
So, you know, that's the only way.
Or just Scotland.
Yeah, anything in Scotland, just because my family's from there. But, you know, my God, do I ever go into heaven anytime I visit Jeff Marco?
Oh,
Cypress Point.
I had the wonderful opportunity to play it this year. First and probably only time I ever will. And Jeff was, you know, the consummate host as you would expect. And
oh yes.
Had a great group playing it, and just, it was so special.
Yeah. That you cannot have a bad day. It could be a horrible weather day there, and you will not have a bad day there. So I probably ought to switch and say Cypress Point.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I put it on. My wife and I have a family calendar, so she knows where I am, and I put it on the calendar because I had Troy Flanagan at Olympic had set it up because he had interned there for Jeff, and I put it on the calendar, Cypress Point golf trip, and she said to me, it's probably a month out. She said, "Hey, I see this on the calendar. What's that? What's this Cypress Point golf thing?" And I said, "Well, that's a non-negotiable." And, you know, we've been married 30 years. And so I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to roll the dice, I'm going to roll them big. And she goes, "Well, what does that mean?" I said, "This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to play Cypress Point. I'm going, honey. That's just the way it is." She goes, "Well, I don't think I like that." And I said, "I knew you wouldn't. That's why I called it a non-negotiable." And then I kind of turned my cheek, but you know, about 3 days, it was pretty quiet. And she came around, she said, "You know what? I hope you have a great time." And I actually got to play Monterey Peninsula country club the day before,
Oh,
which is also very special.
yeah, yeah. Little distinction out there.
Yeah, yep,
Yep,
yep.
yep.
Looks really
And
good.
then you got the Hay, which is the new Tiger Woods Par 3 course.
Yeah, we didn't get to see that, but we drove by it,
Yeah,
but didn't get to
yeah.
stop. So, all right, that's good. College or pro sports?
College.
Boilermakers, I assume.
Yes, 100%.
How you feeling
Boiler
about
up.
this year?
Yeah, we got beat the first game right out that we should have never lost. So.
Basketball. I don't care.
Basketball. We're phenomenal in basketball.
I can't believe that 80's coming back. I'm really sorry he is, because I thought we might be able to beat him this year.
Yeah. But
all right, so I know the answer to this, but people don't know what a car guy you are. So Mopar, Chevy, or Ford?
Mopar. There's no other car.
I knew you would dig in on that.
Mopar.
Yeah. No, you've got a little bit of a collection, don't you?
A little bit.
Yeah, that's kind of your thing. I tell you, if you ever have a chance to see some of Lew's cars, it's a pretty cool hobby you've got there for sure. Yeah. All right, this is the one I gave you ahead of time that you said was going to be tough. Most important innovation in our industry, and it can't be seed harvest equipment because that's too specific. Although that could definitely win the argument.
Well, we could even do pin cross in there.
True.
Yeah, we could, because it changed the game. We'll go. I'm gonna do two. I have to, because irrigation system with the automatic irrigation system.
Yep.
Because as a kid, I did the night watering, put the quick couplers in down the middle of the fairway,
banging the 808s around in the back of the cart right in the middle of the night.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, the Cushman runabout, the little single seater. That one. And then I have to also say spray rig. You and I were talking about this. I had a Cushman runabout with a FMC sprayer that you started with a pull rope and pulled a rope on and off.
Yep.
But nowadays, because I'm into farming also, they got spray rigs out there with cameras on that identify weeds and spray as you go by.
Right.
I mean, my gosh, and then plus they're autonomous.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the spray rigs I was giving a talk out in Las Vegas, and John Deere was there, and they had the autonomous spray rig going on the greens. And I was like, oh my gosh, again,
in our lifetime, in our career.
And it's Jetsons
it really is.
Flintstones. Yeah.
I was early on the GPS thing, and had seen it in ag, and knew that once they figured out how to scale it for golf, that it would be the next big thing. And I'm surprised that adoption hasn't come a little quicker.
Yes.
Especially with some of the retrofit kits that are out there. But yeah, I would agree that technology coming to golf, in the time when, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with labor, in the time when we don't have the labor, and the fact that when I implemented GPS, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago, 14 years ago, we cut down from 2 sprayers to 1, and actually cut our spray time for fairways from 5 to 4 hours with 1 machine, because you could change the speed, because that technology can keep up with it, whereas we couldn't before. So
well, environmentally being sensitive, you're putting out the exact right amount every time that you do it, and
exact right acreage as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's so many pluses to that technology. And it was kind of fun, because when we were sitting there, they were live. They were literally spraying the greens as I was in giving talks to the assistants, and you see the spray rig miss a spot on the green, because they're actually, it's showing it live.
Oh,
and all of a sudden, and all the guys are just lighting up. Oh, look, it missed. And all of a sudden the rig comes around, turns on one nozzle, and goes across and hits it.
So that was like software design.
Bingo.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I would agree. I think those, aerification, for me, aerification tools have definitely been on that list for a long time.
Yeah.
But that's great. Lew, thank you so much. This is
not a problem.
This has been a great conversation. Yeah, I really appreciate your time, and would encourage anybody listening that if you've got questions about bent grasses, Lew's in the tops as far as what he's seen and what he can help you with, and thank you, sir, and hopefully we'll bump into each other sooner than later. Are you going to be in BC in December?
I hope so. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we'll see you there. But Lew Sharp of T-2-Green, really appreciate your time and all you've done for the industry, quite frankly.
Thank you so
been
much.
around a long time, and it's been really good. So,
well, thank God I got to meet you.
Yeah,
in that time period.
whatever. Well, everybody, thank you for listening, and hopefully you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And make sure to subscribe if you haven't. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.